Hey, I'm glad you're here. But I have to warn you, this video isn't for the faint of heart. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 terrifying stories that still haunt me to this day. They're not just scary, they're the kind of stories that make you question reality. The kind that keep you up at night, staring at the shadows in your room, wondering if you're really alone. I've experienced things I can't explain. And now, it's your turn to hear them. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones. And whatever you do, don't look behind you. Let's begin. I've always been drawn to old houses. There's something about them, the creaky floors, the peeling wallpaper, the sense of history that clings to every corner. So when I came across a rundown, abandoned house on the outskirts of town, I couldn't resist. The owner had put up a for sale sign, and while most people had likely passed it by, I saw it as a potential project. The price was ridiculously low, almost too low to be true, but I chalked it up to the house's dilapidated state. The place was massive, built in the 1920s with intricate woodwork and sprawling rooms. I was instantly intrigued by the potential. The moment I walked inside, the air felt thick, as if it had been holding its breath for years. Dust hung in the air, and the smell of mildew mixed with something colder. But still, I could see its beauty, hidden under layers of neglect. The realtor gave me a quick tour, but something felt off the moment I stepped inside. It wasn't the decay of the house, it was the silence. There was an absence of sound, like the place had been abandoned by more than just its owners, as if it had been left behind by time itself. The first few days went by without incident. I moved in slowly, unpacking boxes and deciding where to put everything. The house had a strange charm to it. The rooms felt empty, but not in a lonely way, in a way that made me feel like I was intruding. But I tried to push that feeling aside, telling myself it was just nerves from being in such a large, unfamiliar place. One evening, after unpacking the last of my things, I decided to explore. I had only wandered through the main areas of the house before, but I hadn't ventured into the back parts. There was a long hallway leading to what appeared to be a closed door at the end. It was odd because the rest of the house had open doors or simply walls, but this one seemed deliberately shut off, as if it had been forgotten. I walked toward it, curiosity tugging at me. The door was old, wooden, and heavy. The brass handle was tarnished, and the frame around it was covered in layers of dust. I grabbed the handle, expecting it to be locked. But to my surprise, it turned easily, the door creaking open on its own. Inside, there was nothing. Or at least, that's what I thought at first. The room was pitch dark, except for the small sliver of light coming from the hallway behind me. I could barely make out the outline of the walls, but there was something about the air in the room that felt wrong. It was colder than the rest of the house, almost unnaturally so, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind me. It startled me at first, but I brushed it off as a draft. The room was small, and as I fumbled for the light switch, I noticed something strange. The walls were lined with old furniture. Bookshelves covered in thick layers of dust, a faded armchair in one corner, and an old rug that had long since lost its color. But it wasn't the furniture that bothered me. It was the feeling of being watched. I finally found the light switch, and when the room illuminated, I froze. The walls were covered in old, yellowing newspaper clippings. Articles, pictures, headlines. They were all stuck to the walls with what looked like old tape. My eyes scanned the room, reading snippets of the articles. They were all about disappearances. People vanishing in the town over the years, never to be found. But the thing that got to me the most was the pattern in the pictures. The faces in the photos, half of them had been circled in red ink. I stepped closer to one of the clippings. It was about a family who had gone missing in the 1950s, just a few miles from where the house was located. The headline read, "The Lark family vanishes without a trace, police baffled." The circled face was that of a young girl, no older than 7 or 8. My heart skipped a beat. I pulled my hand away from the article, my skin suddenly prickling with fear. It didn't make sense. Why would these clippings be in this room, hidden away? I hadn't seen anything about this during the realtor's tour. The house was supposed to be abandoned, but someone had gone to great lengths to cover the walls with these stories. It felt like a shrine to something sinister. And then out of the corner of my eye I saw it. A figure standing in the doorway. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. But when I turned, there was no one there. The door was still closed, just as it had been when I stepped inside. My pulse was racing now. My mind was telling me I was imagining things, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. I backed up slowly, my eyes still fixed on the door. I couldn't shake the sensation that someone was in the room with me. I turned to leave, but as I reached for the handle, the door wouldn't budge. It was stuck. I tugged at it frantically, panic rising in my chest. Why was it stuck? The room had felt empty when I entered, but now it felt full, like the walls were closing in on me. I could hear the faintest whisper, just barely audible over the sound of my breathing. It was like a chant, repeated over and over. Do you see it? Do you see it? I froze. My hands shook as I finally wrenched the door open. I stumbled out into the hallway, my mind spinning with what I had just seen and heard. I ran straight to the living room, my heart still pounding in my chest. I had to leave. I needed to get out of this house, but I didn't even know why. It was as if the walls themselves were alive, watching me, waiting for me to figure something out. The newspaper clippings, the cold air, the whispers, it was all connected. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about the room. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I had just been tired, my mind playing tricks on me. But when I went back to that hallway, the door was open again, the same faint light spilling out from the crack. I stepped inside cautiously, my heart racing. The room was exactly the same, but this time, the walls were no longer covered in clippings. Instead, there were pictures of the house, old photographs, faded and yellowed. But there was something even more unsettling about these images. In each one, there was a shadow, a figure standing just out of frame. It was always the same shape, tall, thin, with long, spindly arms. The shadow was never fully visible, but I could tell it was watching the person in the photograph. And then, in one of the images, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The figure was standing directly in front of the camera, and it was smiling. I slammed the door shut, my mind racing. I had to get out of that house. Something about it wasn't right. Something about it was watching me. I couldn't stay any longer. I gathered what little I had unpacked, grabbed my phone, and rushed out the front door. But as I stepped onto the front porch, I saw something that made me freeze. The door was ajar, the door that I had just closed. And there, just inside the frame, was a figure, tall, thin, with long, spindly arms. It was smiling. I never went back. I left town that same day, never once looking back at the house. But I still have nightmares about it. The figure, always smiling, always waiting. I don't know who or what it was, but I know one thing for sure. It wasn't just a house. I never thought much about phone calls. They were just a part of life, something you pick up, talk, and then hang up. Sure, there were telemarketers, spam calls, and occasionally the wrong number. But that all changed one night, when I received a call that would haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a stormy evening, the kind where the rain seemed to fall in sheets, and the wind howled like a wild animal outside my apartment. The power had flickered a few times, and I had just settled in on the couch, trying to distract myself from the weather by binge-watching a show. My phone was charging on the table beside me, its screen dark. Then the phone rang. I picked it up without thinking. The ringtone was a bit too cheerful for the atmosphere, but I didn't mind. "Hello," I said, my voice a little strained, as I'd been talking to my friend earlier and hadn't expected another call so soon. At first, there was nothing but static. A low hum, like the call was being filtered through something, making the sound faint and distant. "Hello," I repeated, frowning. I didn't recognize the number. Then a voice, low, rasping, and slow. "Do you hear it?" The words sent a chill straight down my spine. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly now. Something about the tone of the voice made my skin crawl. It was familiar in an unsettling way, but I couldn't place it. "Do you hear it?" the voice repeated. The words were the same, but this time they were followed by a strange, guttural laugh that made my stomach turn. My grip tightened on the phone, and I glanced at the clock, 1:42 a.m. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I knew there was no way I knew this person. I hadn't given out my number to anyone in days. "Who is this?" I demanded, panic creeping into my voice now. But there was only silence. Then, just as I was about to hang up, the voice came again, this time louder, more frantic. "Do you hear it? Do you hear them?" I froze. I wasn't sure what they meant, but the fear in their voice was palpable, and it triggered something in me, something primal. A deep, instinctual sense that something was wrong, something was coming. My heart began to race. Suddenly, the line went dead. The call ended without warning, leaving nothing but the hum of silence. I stared at the phone, still gripping it tightly. My mind was racing. Who was that? And what did they mean by "do you hear it"? I felt like I had missed something important. But what? My pulse hammered in my ears, and I quickly set the phone down on the table. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it lingered. I glanced nervously out the window. The storm was getting worse, the rain slashing against the glass. There was no other sound except for the occasional rumble of thunder. I told myself it was nothing, just some prank call, but deep down I knew it wasn't over. Over the next few days, the calls didn't stop. They came at all hours, early in the morning, late at night, during the day when I was trying to work. Sometimes they were silent. Sometimes they were just static. But every time there was that same voice always asking, "Do you hear it?" Each call left me more and more unsettled. I started sleeping with my phone on silent, keeping it away from me at all times. But somehow, no matter what I did, the calls kept coming. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I answered the phone. "Who are you?" I shouted into the receiver. "What do you want from me?" This time, there was no static, no delay. The voice was clear and cold. "You should have listened," it said. "You should have heard them. They're coming." I could feel my heart beating in my throat. "Who's coming? What do you mean?" The voice didn't answer. It just repeated over and over. "Do you hear it?" I hung up the phone, shaking. What the hell was happening? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. The constant calls were driving me to the edge, and the cryptic words, "They're coming," kept echoing in my mind. Then it happened. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. My phone had been quiet for hours, and I thought maybe, just maybe, the calls had finally stopped. I tried to focus on the show, but my mind kept drifting. The storm outside had worsened, the wind howling fiercely as if it were alive. Suddenly, my phone rang. I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. I glanced at the screen, no number, just a blank, anonymous entry. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick it up. Maybe it was the need for closure, or maybe I had just given up on running from it. I pressed the phone to my ear, the blood rushing in my ears. "Hello?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the voice came through, lower, closer, as if it were standing right next to me. "Do you hear it?" it rasped. I gasped. "What do you want? Who are you?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, I heard something else. A faint sound, something barely perceptible at first. A scratching noise, like claws dragging along the floor. I stood up, terrified. The sound was coming from inside the apartment. It wasn't just on the phone anymore. It was in the room with me. I turned around slowly, my eyes darting across the dark corners of the room. And then I saw it. A figure, standing in the doorway of my bedroom. A shadow, indistinct but tall. I couldn't make out any features, but I knew it was staring directly at me. The scratching sound continued, louder now, as if the figure was dragging something across the floor. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt like my legs were about to give way beneath me. I took a step back, the phone still pressed to my ear, the voice continuing to ask, "Do you hear it?" I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped the phone and ran out the door, not looking back, not stopping until I was outside, in the rain, gasping for breath. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the apartment was empty. No sign of the figure. No trace of anything unusual. It was as if it had never been there. They didn't find anything. No explanation for the calls, no explanation for what I saw. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back. But the calls haven't stopped. They come at random times, always asking the same thing. Do you hear it? I still hear it sometimes, late at night, scratching sounds, whispers, like something's waiting just beyond the walls. And sometimes, I think I hear the voice again, even when the phone's not ringing. If you ever get a call like mine, be careful. Because the voice isn't just asking, it's waiting for you to answer. And when you do, it'll know. It'll know exactly where you are. Do you hear it? They say trauma warps memory. That time distorts when you're under pressure, how 1 second can stretch into minutes, and an hour can vanish in the blink of an eye. I used to think that was poetic nonsense, until I bought the house. It was never supposed to be permanent. Just a fixer-upper in a sleepy town where everything closes at 6 p.m., and people still wave when they pass each other. I wanted peace, quiet, maybe a chance to rebuild my life after the breakdown. But the house had other plans. The previous owner had died mysteriously. They said it was natural, but no one elaborated. And no one dared speak of the room. When the realtor showed me around, she skipped over a locked door in the east wing. Storage, she muttered. I didn't question it. Not then. I should have. The first night was uneventful. The kind of silence that feels restful, until you realize it's too silent. No wind. No creaks. No hum of power lines or distant dogs barking. Just nothing. Like the house had exhaled its last breath and was holding mine hostage. The second night, the phone rang. I hadn't set up a landline. The screen on my cell phone lit up, no caller ID. I answered it half asleep. Hello? A pause. Then static. Then a voice, raspy, slow, and too close to the mic. Do you hear it? The line went dead before I could answer. I thought it was a wrong number. Maybe a prank. I even laughed, nervous and groggy. But something about the tone. It was the voice of someone who had been listening for too long. The next day, I explored more of the house. Most of the rooms were unremarkable. Until I found the door. The one the realtor had skipped. It was cracked open now. Inside, darkness. Thick and complete, like light refused to enter. But it was cold, unnaturally so, and I swear I heard breathing. Not mine. Something slower. Rhythmic. I didn't go in. Not yet. The calls continued. Same voice. Same question. Do you hear it? Always at night. Always with static. I started recording them, but the files were corrupted every time. Eventually, I stopped answering, but they never stopped calling. Even with the phone powered off, even with the SIM removed, it would ring. Then the door started opening on its own. I'd find it ajar every morning, no matter how I blocked it off the night before. And worse, things started to move in the house. Subtle things. Chairs that weren't where I left them. Lights flickering even though I replaced the wiring. Whispers behind walls. And then I heard scratching. It started under the floorboards, just outside the room, like something crawling beneath the house, dragging long nails or claws. It was quiet during the day, but became frenzied at night. Pacing, digging, waiting. I lost sleep. I stopped going outside. People in town looked at me differently, like they knew. Some even crossed the street when I walked past. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I opened the room. It was small, dusty, and wrong. The walls were covered in yellowed newspaper clippings, disappearances, murders, unexplained deaths, all in this area. All unsolved. Faces circled in red ink. I read one article. Local family vanishes. No signs of struggle. House abandoned overnight. And beneath it, scrawled in handwriting that wasn't mine. Do you see it? I backed out, heart pounding. But the scratching was louder now, beneath my feet than in the walls. I smashed the phone. Didn't matter. That night, it rang anyway. A cold voice again. They're almost through. I started seeing the figure. Tall. Thin. No face. Just shadow. Always in the periphery. In mirrors. Reflections. Standing in doorways at night. Smiling. Every picture in the house began to change. Family photos that weren't mine appeared. Old black and white images of people I didn't know. But in each one, the figure was there, just out of focus. And slowly, I realized something horrifying. Some of those faces were the same as the ones in the newspaper clippings. The ones that vanished. One night, the power went out. The phone rang again. This time I answered. I hear it, I whispered. What is it? The voice was quiet, almost regretful. It's not what, it's where. Look beneath. I pried up the floorboards in that room. Beneath the dust and rotting wood was a trapdoor. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct screamed at me not to. But I had to know. It opened with a groan, revealing a narrow staircase. As I descended, the air grew cold and heavy, like breathing through water. The stairs led to a basement that shouldn't exist. It was larger than the house itself, carved into the earth, covered in symbols, and in the center a well, old, cracked, bone-dry, except it wasn't empty. There were items inside, personal items, watches, rings, dolls, all resting atop a black, oily substance that shimmered unnaturally in the dark. I stepped closer, and something moved. A hand, long, spindly fingers reached over the edge. Then another, and slowly, a figure began to emerge. Faceless, featureless, but it wore a crooked smile carved into the smooth surface of its head. The phone in my pocket vibrated. I pulled it out. Unknown calling. I answered without thinking. The voice, no longer static, no longer distant, whispered. You saw it. Now they see you. I dropped the phone. The last thing I remember was that smile getting closer. I woke up on the floor of the upstairs room. Daylight poured through the cracked window. Noelle. No figure. Just dust and silence. But I wasn't alone. In the far corner of the room stood a mirror. It hadn't been there before. And in the reflection, I wasn't standing alone. The phone hasn't stopped ringing since. And now, when I answer it, the voice on the other end isn't asking if I hear it. It's asking if I remember. Because I do. And every time I pick up, I remember a little more.